Alright guys, welcome back for part 3 on this Banshee shifter cart project. Let's head inside and I'll show you guys where we left off. Okay, so in the last video, we got the engine completely removed from the Banshee and then we started to get it mounted up in the front. If you look here, these front mounts aren't totally secure, they're just tacked into place. But the issue we ran into before we get all this welded up is what I want to do is move this forward about 6 to 8 inches because the back of the engine is hanging over the axle here. So we're going to need to move it forward and then we'll get to work on making some rear engine mounts that are going to come up and around and hook up right here. Then we might add some to the bottom. I don't know if we're going to do that today. And then we'll also start playing around with the chain and sprocket, see if we can get something figured out there. So as you guys can see, we got a lot of stuff to do today, so I'm going to go ahead and get to work. Alright guys, so as I said in the last video, these mounts are detachable, so I can actually unclamp these and move them up here. The only thing I have to do first is I'm actually going to cut these two apart for now and then reattach them later when I get them the set distance, because the Banshee engine is going to be much wider than the engine these were meant to run. Alright, and this piece I got out here, guys, is super scraped up on the bottom. Probably pretty common on these shifter carts, but it's got some nice deep scratches in it. Alright guys, well now that we got the bar connecting these two mounts all cleaned off, I'm going to reattach this one while I figure out the mounts. So what I'm going to do, I think, is I'm going to take some more flat bar steel like this that I used for the front mounts, and I'm going to run it up about 240 millimeters, so it should be about here, and then it's going to come out straight a little bit and connect into the back of the Banshee. It's not going to be very stable to start out, but then I'm going to start bracing it here and there. But first I just want to get it positioned and then we can start bracing everything. Okay, so when I tacked this into place, I actually messed up. I forgot that from this piece here, I have this crossbar, and then basically from the inside of here to the inside of this piece needs to be over about 28 millimeters to mount up on the Banshee engine. So I'm gonna have to cut these tacks off and then move this piece over about 10 more millimeters to get it to line up right. All right, so we got the rear mounts, the vertical part, all set up. We just got to get the part that's going to extrude out from here. But to do that, I'm going to actually put the engine in, lower this down to the ground, get the engine in there, and then I can kind of get a better idea of where we need to put these mounts at. They're going to come out. They are going to have to be, I think it was 78 millimeters higher in the rear than in the front to get the right angle of the engine that it had when it was in the Banshee. Alright guys, well as you can see here, I got the engine positioned into the cart. It is pretty big, it fills up the space, almost full. There's not much room to mess around with here, but it is going to fit just about perfect. The only thing that needs to change here is you can see the rear engine mount has this nice rubber bushing in it, but it does need to come up. Right now it's resting flat on the cart, so I'm going to raise it up to this black line, and then as you can see, once you get it up there, I'll need to extend another piece of steel off to drill into and then line up with these mounts. But after that, that'll get me at the correct height of the engine, because basically when this engine was in the Banshee, it was at an angle like that, and I want to keep it at the exact same angle so I know it's going to work the same as it did when it was in the Banshee. So all I'm going to go ahead and do here is extend these pieces out a little bit, and then we can go ahead, drill them, and then I'll start working on the chain and sprocket, getting that all lined up. All right guys, well these rear mounts are all finished up, so I'm gonna go ahead and lift up the engine here and test them out. I actually grinded off a little bit of material here just because the case was catching on that when I tried to lift it up, but it should be good to go now. Looks like it all mounts up good. All right guys, well now that we got the engine all tacked into place and ready to go, we can start working on getting the sprockets all lined up. So this here is the stock Banshee sprocket, and it's pretty skinny. It's a 520 sprocket that'll work with a 520 chain, but the issue is on this cart, or pretty much all shifter karting applications, you're gonna use a 428 chain, so that's gonna be a wider sprocket like this one here. So I went ahead and got a wider sprocket. So nobody makes this sprocket for a Banshee though, it's actually for a newer YZ250. They just happen to have the same output shaft here. So this one should work. It's got the right 428 pitch, and it goes onto there perfectly. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and just temporarily tighten this into place by hand, just so I can fit up the chain and the rear sprocket. This locking washer that was originally on here doesn't fit anymore because this sprocket's wider. So I'm gonna have to figure out a different washer that'll work with this, but I'm just gonna put the bolt on here for now. All right, and then for the rear, these shifter sprockets are kind of weird just because they're like two pieces that'll go around the axle, which is kind of nice just because you don't have to actually take the axle off to get this on here. But basically what you have is there's these three holes here, if you can see, and then a key. So you're gonna put this key will fit in here, and yeah, it just pops in there. And then the key slides into the sprocket right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this bolted on and lined up. All right, before I tighten this down all the way, I'm gonna make sure to line it up with the chain here. So I'm just gonna put the chain on. I'm not actually gonna cut it yet or anything like that. I'm just gonna put it on to make sure everything lines up. Alright guys, well the chain's all mocked up here. I'm just going to leave it like this for now until I get everything else figured out, and then I'll get it all cut into place just in case I have to end up moving the engine or something like that. But it should be all good to go here. Alright guys, so now that the engine's all in place and we got the chain mounted up, the next step is I want to get the seat like roughly in place before I start working on the radiator. But basically you can see the seat where it originally went is not going to work just because this engine is so wide. And the engine is pretty much maxed out. Like I have it over as far as I can. It's not going to move to the right anymore. Maybe like another 1/4 of an inch, but it's not worth it. So what I'm going to have to do is actually move this mount over to the left and then make a custom one, or see if I can make this old mount work to attach the seat here. So I'm going to start off, I'm just going to hammer this over to the left and get some more clearance. So after hammering this, it is going to weaken the weld, so I will be re-welding it, but I just want to get it in place to test this out. So see if the seat fits in here any better. Okay, cool. It looks like it sits in there a lot better. It's over to the left, but it should still be able to reach the pedals. I'll test it out here in a second. And if you look right here, this side of the seat's catching on the ignition cover for the Banshee engine. So what I'm gonna have to do is probably grind this little corner of the seat off here because it's getting in the way, and hopefully that'll allow it to sit in there even, and then I can fix all the mounts up from there. Alright guys, we're gonna go ahead, try out the seat here. It's not mounted in, but I just wanna see if we can reach the pedals. Okay, it looks like I can reach the gas here actually pretty good. Might have to catch the corner of it, and then the shifter still works and everything. Clutch is good, brake's good, so this should work. All right guys, well we got a good amount of stuff done today. We're getting closer to letting this Banshee rip, but yeah, we got the engine pretty much all mounted up. All the mounts are in place, just need to fully weld them. And then the chain, I'm just gonna leave off for now, but we have all that chain and sprocket stuff figured out, which is a little difficult to find parts for. Got the seat mounted in the rear. Probably will put a mount in the front as well. And then what we have left to do is we gotta get the fuel lines, and then it's not a gravity feed because the tank's lower than the engine, so we got to come up with something that'll pump the fuel to the carburetor. And then the radiator, the lines from the radiator over to the engine, get the clutch cable hooked up and the throttle cable, and then we should be pretty much there. So hopefully in the next couple of videos we'll have her running. All right guys, well that is going to be it for today's video. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. It really helps the channel. Also, make sure you're subscribed and you have your post notifications on if you want to see this Banshee all fired up and running. And if you're not already following me on Instagram, go ahead and follow me on there, and I'll see you guys in the next video.